Work lately. They have like.
Hi, good evening. It's 7 p.m., March 7th, 2018. I'd like to call tonight's session of the City of Delaware Planning Commission meeting to order. Could the clerk please read the roll?
Mr. Badger.
Here.
Mr. Halter.
Here.
Mr. Prahl.
Here.
Mr. Volnick.
Here.
Mayor Riggle. Here. Vice Chairman Mansoras.
Here.
Chairman Simpson.
Here. Item number 2 on tonight's agenda, the approval of the motion summary of the Planning Commission meeting held on February 7th, 2018, as recorded and transcribed. What's the wish of the commission?
Move to approve as recorded and transcribed.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Badger, second by Mayor Riggle. Roll please.
Mr. Badger.
Yes.
Mr. Halter.
Yes.
Mr. Prahl.
Yes.
Mr. Volnick.
Yes.
Mayor Riggle. Yes. Vice Chairman Mansoras.
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes. Moving on to item number 3, regular business. Do I have a motion from this body to remove both these cases from the table and open them back up to discussion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Halter,
Second.
second by Mr. Prahl.
Mr. Badger.
Yes.
Mr. Halter.
Yes.
Mr. Prahl.
Yes.
Mr. Volnick.
Yes.
Mayor Riggle.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Mansoras.
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes. Could the clerk please read item A into the record?
Item A, Willowbrook Apartments, Case 1, 2018-0026. A request by Medrock LLC for approval of a zoning text amendment to the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract PUD overlay zoning text, plan unit development, to allow a modification to the maximum dwelling units and density to multifamily areas 3 and 4, to allow additional dwelling units to Area 3 and removing units in Area 4, thereby decreasing the overall units currently allowed in total located on the east side of Houck Road on approximately 36 acres on property zoned R6 multifamily residential district with a PUD, plan unit development overlay. Case 2, 2018-0027. A request by Medrock LLC for approval of a combined preliminary and final development plan to multifamily Area 3 of the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract for 180-unit apartment complex on approximately 15.506 acres located on the northeast corner of Houck Road and DeGenova Way on property zoned R6 PUD, multifamily residential district with a planned unit development overlay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this case was presented at your last meeting, and you opened the public hearing and took some comment. The public hearing remains open. There have been, I think, 4 or 5 speakers signed up so far that I counted out in the hallway to speak on the case this evening, just to let you know. But the process would be after I give you a brief update and answer your questions to continue the public hearing at your pleasure, and then formally close the public hearing if that's your pleasure, and then you can deliberate from there.
Okay.
So by way of update, the one very specific question that you had asked, and really I think the purpose of the tabling at your last meeting was with respect to this question of the Boulder Drive extension. In general terms, you have, by way of update of the March 7th staff report, the city manager's recommended condition. We've modified our recommended conditions to be his with respect to Boulder, and that is that this case, should you recommend approval and council ultimately approve it, it would be conditioned upon this applicant constructing that piece of Boulder Drive from Houck Road to where Boulder Drive stubs at the end of Harmony Drive today, and thereby complete the section of Boulder that is on the northern portion of this site. So I think that was the one specific question you had, and that is the answer we have for you this evening. There are a few other things, more details just to run through, but there was a wood fence and dumpster enclosure submitted by the applicant. In reviewing that as staff, we find that we can concur with their proposal. It fits with the materials that they're seeking to use on the site. And the dumpster enclosures are only visible on the site. This is a private site, as you know. So our recommendation is approval of that change. That's reflected in these updated recommendations. The previous recommendation regarding trees, there was a fee and/or some more planting due or some combination thereof. We have more specific information. Our city arborist has confirmed that information over the course of the last month, that the reason for that was related to cottonwood trees, which are prohibited to be planted in the city and therefore don't count against tree removal. And that is consistent with how we've approached every other applicant. So treating this applicant the same in that regard. So that condition has been modified such that there is no additional tree replanting. He's got additional for the trees he's taken out here, but there's no additional above and beyond what he's showing. And the old condition 12, which was with respect to refuse service, now condition 11 with the removal of the tree one. The applicant had requested some changes in refuse service, essentially making it private. Staff took that back over the last month, and the Public Works Director recommends that we maintain our original condition of requiring city refuse collection on this site, and condition 11 reflects that. So those are the changes and updates I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions, or given the crowd, perhaps you want to continue the public hearing.
Okay. Does this body have any questions for staff based on the updates in the report?
So from the original 1999 ordinances,
Okay.
had some 280 acres for the entire Willowbrook Farm tract. How far through are we on those? Do you have any?
I don't know the number right off the top of my head. I certainly could get you that answer in more specificity. If I had to guess, I would say probably about 3/4 of the way through. Looking at other staff who look at this all the time,
Maybe a little more.
see if I'm crazy or not. Maybe a little more. It depends if you want to count the commercial. It's really not done anything at 36 and Houck right now. Something in that area.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to come forward? Just state your name and your address for the record, and let us know if you've got anything to add or any comments.
Randall Allen Woodings, Principal, Conta Johnson Associates, Architects Planners, 400 South 5th Street, Columbus, Ohio. My only comments this evening are we have continued to work with staff, changing and modifying per their direction, as well as engineering comments that we received February 20th. We got them around the 28th from the Varro Engineering, and have reviewed the conditions, and along with the road condition, have modified the landscaping and added additional landscaping along the north property line, and changed the mounding, added the mounding on the south property line, and pretty much did whatever staff and the engineering department would have wanted us to do.
Okay. No concerns with any of the changes?
No.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant tonight? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I'm going to open this up to public comment. I'm just going to ask for a couple of things this evening. Please be brief and to the point with your comments. We want to be sure that everybody's got an opportunity to speak. I'm going to hold everybody to a 3-minute timeline. I'll raise my hand when you're at 2 minutes and 30 seconds so you know that you need to wrap up. What we'll do this evening, I've got a list of folks who have signed to speak this evening. If you didn't get a chance to get your name on the list, I'll ask again at the end, so you will have an opportunity. Please do your best not to repeat comments that previous members of the community have already stated. So at this time, I'll call up Scott Kinslow, please. Scott, if you could please state your name and your address for the record when you approach the podium.
Anthony Scott Kinslow at 107 Dyerston Way here in Delaware. May I ask a question real quick? Comments that were given before the earlier meeting from last month, are those being considered as well, or are we trying not to repeat those, or just a question, I mean, are you taking into consideration or remembering what we talked about last month?
Not necessarily. So with that said, if you have questions, please state those. What I'd like to do is I'd like to collect everybody's questions and then we'll address them at the end. It's much easier than having a back and forth. So
Okay.
please feel free.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for the earlier mail out this month.
Could you please pull the microphone closer to your mouth?
I want to thank you for the earlier mail out that you sent this month as opposed to last month. We got it earlier. However, the sign that's posted on the property over there still says February 7th. So there's not a notification out there for the public to see that sign for this meeting tonight. My first comment is on the dumpster that is placed on the north property line right along Boulder. If you were to measure the placement of that dumpster with the house that's nearest on our side of the street, I bet you will find that it's probably 100, 110 feet from the actual corner of the house. We have prevailing southwest winds. We would ask that that dumpster be removed from the north end of the property, maybe to the inside where some of the other inside dumpsters are. We like the idea of the Boulder Road being built ahead of time. We would ask that lighting be placed between our property on both sides of the road, or at least along the road when construction starts for the apartments, so that we have lighting. It's very dark back there, and there's going to be access. There's going to be people right in our backyards without any lighting whatsoever, so we ask for lighting. Along Boulder, the buildings are getting closer and closer. The apartment buildings are getting closer to Boulder as you approach the northeast corner. The proximity of the existing home on Harmony is only about 100 feet to the actual building to building of the apartment. That is awfully close, even though there's a road passing through and you do have some screening. I noticed on the drawings that the mounding, the height and the width of the mounding diminishes as you continue towards Harmony. And the mounding is only a few feet high as opposed to further towards Houck. Only one more comment. I would say that this pretty picture that they've been given to you from the illustrator, I've done camera work for many, many years, and I can say that this is enhanced, or at least his interpretation is to the point that these buildings are not this high, okay? They are much higher. The landscape, the parking space, the yard in front of it, these are only a few feet. So this is a very pretty picture to make everybody smile, but this isn't going to be the reality of what's going to be built. These are much taller. We need a little bit more space for a buffer between our homes and the character of what's going to happen here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Karen Kaufman. Karen, if you could please state your name and your address for the record when you reach the microphone.
My name's Karen Kaufman. I'm at 107 Diverston Way. We live together. It's so important to me to be here that I rearranged travel schedule, okay, for my work. So the biggest problem that I have with adding these additional units is the additional traffic that we're going to have. Right now on Houck Road, the lighting of sight is really bad, especially now that we have at Houck, and then depending on which side of the road you're on, you got Benjamin Way or Diverston. It's an accident waiting to happen, and now you're going to have more cars and more people. The other things I wanted to talk about too was back in May of 2006, I seem to have found out that the commission voted 7-0 to not give Sabatino a building permit because he couldn't even keep the Houck Road entrance at 36 looking nice, okay? So as a matter of fact, I think Mr. Eflin said, and I quote, I'm not going to give you a building permit unless you do A, B, and C. And we're going to follow up on that and make sure the code is enforced. Guess what? It's not. So he cleaned it up one time, he pulled the weeds. That's it. I mean, it looks like hell. So with how Mr. Sabatino is doing some of these things, it makes me think, if he cannot do something that simple and upkeep an area this big, what makes us think he's going to take care of this other place? I also read that it could compromise the city's status as a Tree City USA. I don't know about that. You may know more than I do. Some constant themes that I have seen from other properties he has, Silver Maple is one of them. You might want to drive by there. Lack of parking, consistent theme. Tenant turnover, it's high. He's constantly giving out eviction notices. I saw it in the court records. And you know, property ownership goes hand in hand with pride in your community. These people are going to be turning over. They're not going to be there long term. He fails to maintain the properties. It's like if he's out of sight, it's out of mind. You know, he doesn't have to look at it. Would any of you want this in your backyard? Literally in my backyard. Mr. Sabatino seems to run his corporation based on intimidation and fear. His current tenants are constantly having problem getting things addressed. The property managers are turning over like crazy. So the last thing I'll
Could you please
say,
wrap up?
yeah, the last thing I'll say is that with the known issues of Sabatino, including filing a lawsuit against our councilwoman, Lisa Keller, for infringing on his civil rights simply because she spoke at the last meeting. Why does this commission think this endeavor is going to be any better than any of the other ones? I think Mr. Sabatino is an untrustworthy bully, and maybe I need to be worried about being sued for speaking and maybe having even a libel suit for my words being documented.
Thank you. Carl Berghauer, please step up to the microphone and give your name and your address for the record.
Carl Berghauer, 277 Harmony Drive in Adelaide Park. This increase in units from 140 to 180 represents 28.57% increase. This is not a minor increase. This is major. 28.57%. There's not a resident in Adelaide Park that wants this increase granted. We've all gone through and done our homework. When I built there, I did my homework. I knew what was going to be built around me, and I'm prepared for apartments to be built. I don't want 180 units. I'm happy with 140. At last meeting, the architect described the amenities in this complex: a pool, exercise room, bocce ball court, mailboxes with parcel lockers indoors so they can get Amazon packages, a dog wash station. These are great amenities for residents that live there. He said that if he could not, he had to increase units to 180 in order to justify these amenities. That's only a bottom line to him recouping his cost. Not a single other person gets the benefit of the amenities other than the residents. It's just cost for him to recoup his money. I'm sure the downturn of the economy in 2008 has played an impact in his development plans, but that's not our problem, and it shouldn't be your problem. 140 units is acceptable. And finally, looking at his plans, he has an MOT, or maintenance of traffic plan, so that he can construct the entryway off of Houck Road. It involves closing the bike path or multi-use path at Boulder Drive and at DeGivona Way and detouring pedestrians to the other side of the road. I don't know how many of you have been out there. There is no other paths along Halk Road to the YMCA. My son rides that route to the Y with his friends on his bike. There's people that walk it and run it every single day. That's an unacceptable plan, and it just demonstrates his inability to understand the area where he's going to do work, his compassion for the people around him, and it's all a him first, his opinion. If these people understood what was around them, they'd have better plans in their preliminary and final plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Higgins. Joe, if you could just say your name and address when you reach the microphone.
Joseph Higgins, 447 Linwood Street, Delaware, Ohio. Due to the short notice of the last meeting, I was unable to attend, and also based on the time, I don't want to rehash the questions that a lot of people have raised. There are also some of my concerns, but I do just want to be on the record of saying I don't understand the benefit of going to the 180 units for us, and I would ask that you reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Campbell. Nancy, if you could just state your name and address when you reach the microphone.
Nancy Campbell, 900 Canal Street, Delaware, Ohio. I was at the last meeting and expressed my disappointment of what bigger and better means to the city of Delaware. As I said before, I moved from Dublin to kind of get away from this kind of bigness. I know as we develop as a city, we are going to have different venues coming into town. I did some research and I did see that the average 2-bedroom apartment in Delaware is going for $10.33 a month, and the developer is saying that they are going to rent at $13.80, I believe. I just don't know where the people are going to be coming to rent these apartments. I think there are too many apartments for too many parking spots. I wonder where the people are going to park. There's just too many people crammed into a small area there. If you drive by the land, there's no way that all this is going to fit on that parcel. The access in and out, if you try to get out of Halk, out of the Y, and try to make a left at a busy period of the day, it's not good. And especially where the turn is on there and going into the apartment complex, you're right at the bend on Halk, and the line of sight is not good. So I would suggest that there is access in and out on Boulder, and to have more access points than are currently. Another thing was brought to my appointment was, as someone else had talked about, the letter that was given about Lisa Keller, and I just think it's bullying. And I think, we talk about bullying in our society, and yet when I think we have freedom of speech here, I think our councilwoman deserves that right. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Stone. Okay. Is it Larry and Debbie Sears? Did I get that? No? Okay. Is there anybody here who's not on the list that has a comment to add? Please approach the microphone and give your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stuart Klinger. I live at 113 Blakemore Drive in Delaware, Ohio. Actually, where Boulder will intersect is my backyard corner. A few things that I didn't hear. Is this unit going to be master metered or individually metered for utilities? Because if it's master metered, the city will lose. They'll lose out on income tax, because it's up to the landlord to provide the city with information of the tenants. Secondly, last meeting, Mr. Weber said the traffic's not sufficient enough for traffic lights. That's not true. We had 300 more cars on that road. You can't pull out of Diverson. The buffer on the east side here that goes to the tree line, to the Y, is that a fence? What is that going to be? Are those apartments going to have access to the land there at the Y or what? Finally, and as you can tell, I don't talk in public much. The increase from 140 to 180 is simply sleight of hand until phase 4 is even put on the table. Thank you.
Just to be clear, which buffer were you referring to?
The whole east side that backs up to the green space, which is the Y.
Okay, the buffer that
Yeah,
backs
is
up
that
to the
is
Y.
that a fenced? Is it just wide open so those apartment people can just use that as their backyard? That's what I think.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Is there anybody else here who'd like to speak this evening? Or have anything to add to the comments already stated tonight? Okay. All right, what I'd like to do is just have the applicant come back up and we'll kind of work our way through these questions. Quite a bit of them tonight, which is great. So I'll start with our engineering team. So there were a couple of comments that came up that
Sure.
I think you guys can help provide some color to. One of those being, what would the lighting requirements be for the new stretch of the roadway that will be built? One of the members of the public had some questions about that.
We would enforce the same standard as any subdivision street. So you have lighting on both sides.
Okay. And then in terms of the traffic, there are several members of the public that have concerns about the traffic. So if you can just kind of briefly restate what your assessment was.
Yeah, as I said last month, it's an arterial, so we do expect there to be high traffic. There was a traffic study done when this development was proposed, and it did actually, for full disclosure, did model that there would need to be some signals along this stretch. And I can say with a high level of confidence that it doesn't meet legal requirements, warrants for traffic signals, or we would have had them up by now. You can't just put a traffic signal up for a small period of time. Peak does cause some inconvenience, but there are some legal ramifications to putting up unwarranted traffic signals. And there's a lot of nuisances with unwarranted traffic signals. What do you do with them the other 23 hours a day? Do you flash them? We flashed them in this. If we put them up unwarranted, flash them at night, we would immediately get complaints about the amber flashing lights in windows in the residential area. So, you know, we are cognizant of the volumes. We've done our research before these meetings, and I've pulled the crash history along the stretch of road. And there's been, I believe, 5 accidents in the last 5 years. I have them somewhere in my packet, but I can describe them in general as 2 hit skips, which means most likely it was an impaired driver that left the roadway and got back on and did some property damage, but didn't want to get caught. There was 1 legitimate accident that could be blamed on it being an arterial road and conflict in turning movements. There was an animal hit, and then there was another distracted driver where there's a dog jumping on the driver's lap. That's the accident history on this stretch. So it is a safe, in engineering terms, it is a safe stretch of roadway. You just have to pay attention, and you have to take your time, and you have to be patient in the peak hour. And I know that's not a popular response, but that is our assessment. And we have a high level of confidence in our assessment.
Okay.
Man, I'm sorry, but is there, maybe for their benefit, can you say where traffic light signals are potentially proposed along Houck Road when the volumes are warranted?
The intersections that were predicted to have signals are Cobblestone, potentially Boulder. So someday they could be warranted, but they're not warranted now, and they don't even come close to meeting warrants. You have to have a lot of competing traffic competing for the roadway, not just in 1 hour or 2 hours a day. You have to have other warrants. And without getting into a half-hour lesson on traffic signal warrants during this meeting, I'll just have to say, please have confidence in our our assessment.
Okay. And this, there's one more question. I'm not sure if this falls into your category or not. There was a question about the MOT
Yes,
in terms of closing the
Our
bypass.
plan reviewers, we commented on that. That won't be in the next submission. We caught that in our plan review.
Okay.
There was also a question about the access.
So, I'm sorry, Carrie, so hold your point for a second. So what that, I understand what you mean. A little bit of it was maybe a little jargony. So you caught it in your review such that you will maintain the bike path be open along the east side of Howe so that people could get to the Y during construction, or?
The comment we made on our plan review was there is no sidewalk on the west side of Howe. So you're going to have to find a way to maintain traffic using most likely a temporary gravel path of some sort, or you just backfill your excavations at the end of the day. There could be periods during the day, it's just unavoidable, where it might be closed for a little bit of time. The contractor will be required to put a temporary fix in overnight that's safe so that it's just not closed.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to make it a little clearer.
No, that's
Thank you.
I think Carrie you were going to make a.
Yeah, I also heard a question about the access location off of Halk Road into this development. Matt, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I think that the overall plan is good. I don't know that accessing from a traffic engineering standpoint does make sense to access Boulder Drive across from the other public street that's there, but I don't think that would be a popular. I predict it would not be a popular decision because it would break the mounding in that area and break the buffer up quite a bit. Most of the traffic is going to use the main access point, and it is not an ideal location, but it is optimized location for the site, meaning that there really isn't a better place along Howe. We are going to be very cognizant in the final review of the plans that there's no mounding or trees or anything blocking the site distance at the main entrance, like has unfortunately been placed in areas to the north. We won't repeat that pattern. It'll be a lot. It'll be very plain looking, unfortunately, but it's for safety reasons.
Safety first. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Other things that came up during conversation was buffering adjacent to the Y. What's in the proposal right now in terms of buffering adjacent to the Y?
Well, we have to be more specific because the Y is on two sides of the site, to the east and to the south.
Well, let's start with the south.
As we
work our way around.
As we refer to the Y.
Yes.
The Y is really to the south. And then there is a wetland park to the east.
Yes.
A wooded wetland park to the east. So in the proposal, the applicant can give their answer, but what we noted as staff is that it would be open to Stuart's question. Along that east side, there's quite a bit of setback, but it would be open. And in fact, the pathway network would connect, and you can kind of see that in the southeast corner from the site into the pathway network around the recreational amenity. And from my perspective, that really isn't any different than what we'd normally require other applicants to do to connect in pedestrian amenities, particularly to in this case, a public park.
Okay.
It could be that if you saw fit or you see reason to, that a privacy fence or something could be put in there, but we're not recommending that at this time.
I don't know that it's appropriate to have a privacy fence adjacent to the Y, in my opinion.
It's an open area, and I think to Stuart's question was, is it, what I was interpreting from his question was, maybe it should be fenced off as opposed to just open like that. But in our opinion, having the connection to the public parkland makes some sense, the same as it would with the subdivision or anything else.
Okay. And another question that came up was regarding whether this would be individual or mastered metered utilities. Can you provide some comment on that?
The water is master metered through the direction of the city, and everything else is paid by the individual apartment owner.
Okay. And then, and
Mr. Chairman, I know the utility director isn't here, and I'm not debating any of Mr. Clymer's points, but I just would add that a master meter from the city's perspective in terms of reading 1 meter instead of 140 or 180 separate meters is more efficient from that perspective. Not debating he didn't raise that point, he raised other points, so I'm not debating what he said.
Okay.
Just something else to consider.
And then another item that keeps coming up, David, and I think it's just, maybe if you could just provide some brief color around the density at this property.
I was hoping you were going to do dumpsters and the other buffering for.
Would you like me to save the best for last?
We've had a lot of density discussions in the
We have had
city
a lot
of Delaware over the last several months in different cases.
We have had a lot of density.
If you don't
discussions.
mind, sure. Yeah, 'cause I think that's a little
Sure,
more
we'll save
complicated.
that for last. That's for last, right?
I had a
Certainly
question,
a hot
Mr. Chairman, related to the dumpster on the north side of the site.
Yeah.
And I think the comment was, could we find another place for that that wasn't as close to Boulder Drive and then the adjacent homes on the other side? I don't see a reason why the applicant couldn't find another place on the site for that and still service the units adequately. Obviously, this is, there are some details that we're going to have to work through with staff, and that's one we certainly could work through. The one thing I would note, and this bleeds into another question about the buffering and mounding on the north side as well, so I'll take that one.
Sure.
We noted on the plans, and Randall knows this, that the mounding, and it sort of starts to happen right around that dumpster and goes east. The mounding is not per our recommendation right now to be 6 foot high with soldier course of at least 6 foot at planting trees on the mound. And so my understanding from the applicant's response is that when final plans come forward for, if this gets approved, that those items would be addressed as well. He's at least committed in emails to meeting that condition. I think there's enough room in there. It's just not showing up on the initial plans that were sent in. So with respect to the dumpster, there would be a bigger mound and more trees in the area of the dumpster. I think that was your question. So that may help alleviate some of the screening issue, but I hear you. If it can be moved to, away from that location, I think, I ask it back to the applicant, I think that would be a good thing to do. Yeah, and there were smell concerns as well. So moving it farther away should help that.
Is that something where there's an opportunity to look at it?
If I may add, to comply with the city's requirement that this be city refuse, we're going to have to revisit all the dumpster locations. So
It's a good point.
yeah, it could all change.
Yeah, we have a particular kind of apparatus that needs particular way of turning and being able to access the dumpsters. And so that is probably something we're going to have to look at across this site. But I think my first comments with respect to the change in recommendation of the dumpster corral still hold. I still think wherever we arrive at these, they're going to be essentially internal to the site and be fully corralled as well. So we'll make sure, we would ensure that happens at the staff level.
And just so I can put a sales pitch in for our refuse service for the Public Works Director, we're flexible in the number of pickups we do per week. We provide a very high quality service, and we can actually reduce the number of dumpsters if we need to and pick them up more frequently. We have a lot of flexibility, so we'll be as creative as possible. And we hear the comments about separation from the neighborhood too. So we'll add that criteria to our discussion tomorrow. We're meeting with the engineer on the layout, on some fine tuning of the layout.
Can we push for recycling on this too?
Absolutely.
Nice.
Mayor, you're talking about a recycling area.
Anything I missed, other than density?
I guess that leaves density, doesn't it?
There was a parking
And
question.
building height.
Oh, parking, there was a parking question.
Yeah, that's right. So regarding parking right now, compared to what we need code-wise,
They're providing 372 parking spaces. Our code requires 362 per unit. So right now they have 12 additional spaces. And those are probably around the clubhouse, I'm guessing.
okay.
And also some of these, if you're looking at the site plan for the first time, citizens, it's, you're seeing some that are obviously on the plan that are uncovered parking spaces, but there are quite a number of parking spaces shown that would be in garages as well that they're not as obvious on the plan, at least on this plan. If you look at the line drawings, they're a little bit more obvious. So, it actually exceeds code.
And then in terms of building height, where are we building height-wise? versus
Maximum height would be 35 feet
Maximum height is 35 feet.
in that district.
Yeah, I'm just, some of the houses in the area are two-story houses, and we've got pretty good-sized pitches on these roofs, and I don't really see what the difference is.
They're going to be pretty close to most of those homes. Obviously, the homes vary, and there are going to be some ranch homes in there and other things. But the existing PUD text, this height would comply with that, as shown. Which is the most germane to this case. But in terms of just sort of real world, obviously they're bigger buildings in the house overall. I think pretty well broken up, as opposed to just a big linear rectangular box of apartment building, which they could do. But the height is going to be fairly comparable to a two-story home.
Okay.
A little bit, probably a little bit higher. But the roofs are particularly pitched in this case.
What's your max height here at this development? I don't see it
Here's
overall.
here's how those buildings work. It's a slab on grade building. It's got 9-foot-high ceilings inside. Typically, a lot of homes and apartments are 8 feet. It's got 9 feet, then it's got about 18 to 20-inch trusses. And the second story is 9 feet. So they essentially, where the windows are a two-story house
Yes.
at the bottom of the eave line.
That's 3 feet high.
Typical homes now have 9-foot-high ceilings.
And 8-foot second floor.
And some have an 8-foot second floor. These have a 9-foot on both floors.
I think part of the difference too, commissioners, is that the roof heights are particularly pitched on these, much more so than our requirements for single-family homes. Again, and we've been over this in recent cases.
I'm sorry, we're talking.
We've been over that in recent cases, and that typically a more pitched roof is associated with a little bit higher end standards rather than lower end standards in just general terms.
35 is the maximum. I mean, these appear to be below 35 feet, correct?
As they come in, if approved, they come in permit by building permit. We also check that as they come in to make sure they're in compliance with the planned unit development text that was approved.
Okay. Do you have anything else from your notes?
There was a question about the cleanup of the area around Howell and Williams and that. Is that something?
I mean, that's really more of an enforcement conversation than.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one. I mean, we've gone out on enforcement in the entire Houck Road corridor, not just on property Mr. Shepatino owns, because it's not all in his hands anymore. We do that now coming out of about that time that I think the lady mentioned. We do that annually in the Houck Road corridor to the Houck Road required landscaping plan. We've had lots of conversations about that, as you know. And we have sent notices out on an annual basis. I don't think there's been a year since we started doing that we haven't sent a notice out that a tree has died and had to be replaced, or there may be tall grass or weeds at the time we go out. I know we've noticed on the fence having to be repaved, both on Dr. Gravener's side and on the other side, and on the signage, which has been cleaned up significantly at that corner, in my opinion, since that time that was mentioned. So we do that on an annual basis. Again, it's to the standard of the landscape plan. It may not be to the standard of every individual, and I understand that.
Fair enough. All right, well, David?
I can't avoid density discussions.
Unfortunately not.
Well, it depends if you want to talk density or talk units. I think it's easier to talk units. I'm going to be consistent with what I said up to this point. And we had a slide previous that I think that one will do, that basically showed the two sub areas. In total, this is part of a master plan development of several hundreds of acres. It had unit counts overall, it had density counts overall, and then it had many what we call sub areas today, even commercial sub areas. But in terms of the residential, this is multifamily area 3. That's the one with the apartments we're talking about tonight. And multifamily area 4, that's the one to the east, in the east of the Y in the community park. That's multifamily 4. So what's allowed today is in multifamily 3, 140 units. What's allowed in multifamily 4 today is 155 units. What's being sought is 140 more units, 180 units in multifamily area 3 in the configuration you see in this plan. And also being sought is to reduce in the PUD text the 155 units of multifamily 4 to 100. Theoretically and technically, the applicant, the unit counts are caps. So if you want to go below the caps, you don't have to come and seek a zone change to do that. You can just go below the cap. However, what this would do is it would make the new cap at 100 units. So whether it's this applicant or some other developer in the future, that new cap would actually be moved down. You wouldn't have to rely upon a promise or an idea that it might be 100 instead of 155. In terms of density, again, I can calculate density many different ways for you. What I would say is that the proper thing to do here is to recognize the 1999 PUD. The multifamily areas all had acreages associated with them. The acreages on the plan sets that I think most people have seen are really net acreages of that where they're trying to build the apartments. And so that's 15.506. That's a net acreage in multifamily 3. But the area of multifamily 3 gross, which is, again, how we typically calculate density and how it was calculated in the master PUD, for 3 was 17.24 acres. That changes then the ultimate density number when you back units into it. Not a lot, but it changes it a little bit. No question, they want more units in multifamily 3. More dense in multifamily 3 than it was originally proposed. Absolutely no question about that. Quite a bit fewer units and less dense in multifamily area 4, and overall the density comes down just slightly overall by 15 units across the whole thing. So that's what I can tell you about density. And I can go into even more detail if you want it, but
I think you're already.
It seems like eyes are already glazing over. I think the point is multifamily area 3 is sought to have more units, a little bit higher density, and multifamily 4 a little bit fewer units and less density. I would say on the order of magnitude of about 2.5 dwelling units per acre more in the one and 2.5 dwelling units per acre less in the other, depending how you want to calculate it, but something on that order of magnitude.
Okay.
No, I'm not doing the people per acre calculation here as we did in the prior.
No, you're already above my pay grade.
I will if you want me to.
All right. Does this body have any additional questions? For either staff or the applicant? I think we've made it through all the questions. I can't say whether we've answered them adequately to everybody's liking, but thusly we've made it through it. Let's talk a little bit about process from here forward. Obviously, at this point, assuming we make a decision on this case, what are next steps in the process for the benefit of the folks in attendance today?
Sure. So the next, the planning commission makes a recommendation. They don't make final decisions here this evening. So they make a recommendation to city council. City council would then take up these cases for, I would say, at least a minimum of 3 readings, Madam Mayor, given the controversial nature of the case. And we kind of do this same process over again at council, essentially. There would be a first reading where literally Elaine would just read the cases again, and they would set a public hearing for the next council meeting typically. They'd set a date and a time. We don't set a time at Planning Commission. They set a time. And so the public hearing would occur at the second council meeting that the cases appear. And then council could take as many readings as they need to deliberate, ask questions, get answers, that sort of thing. But we would anticipate at least 3 in this case. And the mayor's nodding her head yes, so she agrees with that. That'd be the process.
Okay.
So this time I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Mr. Mansoros,
Second.
second by Mr. Badger. Roll, please.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Halter,
No.
Mr. Prohl,
Yes.
Mr. Volnick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Manzoros.
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes. All right, bringing this back to the commission. What's the wish of the commission this evening?
So we take it to a vote.
Is that a motion?
You want to make the motion? Well, I'll move then to approve 2018-026 with the conditions that staff has put on.
Motion by Mr. Badger. Not seeing a second. What's the process?
The code does require some action by this body within a period of time. I don't have those dates off the top of my head. If you want to take a recess, I can find that for you. I think you're still within that period of time. So what I would recommend, if you don't have a second in this case, we should certainly, if you need some more information from us, let us know what that might be. If you need to think about it and deliberate on what you've heard tonight, then I would probably recommend that you place these cases back on the table.
Well, what happens is the motion dies for lack of second.
His-
Now there is no motion.
His motion to approve, correct.
His motion, but the second motion dies because of lack of second, which was 0027.
No, his,
I didn't make a motion on 2-7.
no.
Was on Tuesdays.
He made a motion for approval, there was no second, so that's
It's off the table.
that's done now. So now it's just sitting at deliberation again. So I would recommend that if you'd put the cases on the table till your next regular scheduled meeting, and then ask us for any follow-up you may want.
Well, but if we
If you
don't,
need-
but if we don't amend the existing Willowbrook PUD, then 0027 is mute. Couldn't be passed if it wanted to be.
I would agree with that.
So once again, I don't think we have to take it up unless they want to take it up again, we can, but we don't have to.
because you're a recommendation body to city council, what I would say is you can just take no action. And the zoning
The city
code,
council take the action, we could take no action.
if you take no action, what will happen is after the expiration of the period of time that I don't know off the top of my head, it would move along to city council, I believe, as a technical recommendation of denial. Again, if you want to take a 10-minute recess, I will go look that up. We've never had that in Delaware since I've been here in 14 years. So
At
I'd
this
put that
time-
on the
I'd
record.
like to hear.
At this time, we're going to take a 10-minute recess
Okay.
to deliberate and find out some more information. Interesting. I've never seen All right, I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting back to order, please. All right,
Mr. Chairman, I think I have some answers for you. And in the interest of just keeping the record clean, I'm just going to read the code section for you.
thank you.
So with respect to the zoning amendment, recommendations by the Planning Commission are governed in section 1130.06. There's an A and a B. I'm going to read them both. A, within 60 days from receipt of the proposed amendment, we're within that time frame, unless the applicant requests more than the 60 days, which I would advise you to give them the opportunity to do that, if that's your choice of action. At least let them answer. It continues, and after the conclusion of the public hearing, required in section 1130.05, the Planning Commission shall recommend one of the following to council. 1, that the amendment be granted as requested. 2, that the amendment be granted as modified by the Planning Commission. Or 3, that the amendment be denied. Item B, if the Planning Commission does not make a recommendation on the proposed amendment within the 60 days or an extended period as may be agreed upon by the applicant or City Council, it shall be deemed that the recommendation of the Planning Commission is that the amendment be denied. A technical denial in our parlance. So we, Lance and I both believe, and we would have to confirm this tomorrow with the city attorney, that we're within a 60-day period. We'll have to confirm whether the kind of a tolling of the case by putting it on the table doesn't make it within 60 days. But in any case, 60 days is the amount of days. If you take no action, it would move on to City Council as a technical denial. Just to complete the loop with respect to the development plan cases, I won't read all of those because you didn't make a motion on those, but I will tell you that it's essentially the same process that would result in a technical denial if no action is taken within 120 days. So it could be, in my mind, that should you take no action tonight, the zone change might move on, but the development plan case might not, because I don't believe we're outside of 120 days at this point. I feel pretty confident in saying that. So just something to know. But that's the answer to your question.
Okay. All right. So I'll bring it back to the commission once again. What's the wish of the commission?
We have a motion. So we have a motion.
That's true.
Second.
Second by Mr. Paul.
What was the motion again? I'm sorry.
To approve.
To approve?
To approve with staff recommendations. I don't know if there
Yeah,
were.
I think you should I think what we said on the record just before was that that died for lack of a second, so that if I believe you can remake the motion at the same hearing. So you can, I would do that and then get a second. So.
That's okay.
Okay.
If that's what you wanted, it seems like that's what you wanted to do.
Well, I'll go ahead and move then that 2018-026 be approved as submitted with the changes and the staff's recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Badger.
Second.
Second by Mr. Paul. Roll, please.
Mr. Badger?
No.
Mr. Halter?
No.
Mr. Prohl?
No.
Mr. Volnick?
No.
Mayor Riggle? No. Vice Chairman Mansoris?
No.
Chairman Simpson?
No.
Well, there's no need to do the next one, is there? You can't move
Should we do
forward
it
with
just to
that.
make it clean?
I think you should do it just to make it clean, would be my advice here tonight. But I agree with you. If the amendment fails, and again, you're just making a recommendation to the council, but if the amendment fails, then the plan is intimately tied, obviously, to the number of units in the amendment. But to make it clean, I would do that.
All right, I'll move 2018-027 as requested with staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Badger.
Second.
Second by Mr. Paul.
Mr. Badger?
No.
Mr. Halter?
No.
Mr. Prohl?
No.
Mr. Volnick?
No.
Mayor Riggle?
No.
Vice Chairman Mansoris?
No.
Chairman Simpson?
No. All right. Moving on to item number 4, Planning Director's report.
Did you want to clarify that this still goes to council?
Right. We understand that.
Okay, I just want.
Yeah, so the cases move on to city council with a recommendation of denial from the city planning commission for both cases. For the additional 40 units with respect to the amendment and the subtraction of 55 units.
Okay.
And then also for the development plan, which was 2018-0027, they recommended denial of the plan as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Irregardless of the council's decision, the developer could move forward with 140 units on this.
That's what it's approved for.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving along, Planning Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sent out some more communication to you today, really with respect to the comprehensive plan, some background information on autonomous vehicles. They're going to have quite a big impact on our collective built environment and mobility. So take a look at that. We continue to work forward on initial data request, really a massive data request from our consultants. So we're preparing that. And we are also preparing to initiate some contact and a call for steering committee members, which we've initiated with city council, but I think I have to remind them to make sure I get their names. Are they? I didn't see those yet, Mayor, but I'll follow up with you. And then it looks like the coming months could be full of quite a number of cases of lots of different kinds. With respect to that, we could have 4 next month. Right now, I think we have 2, 3
Well,
technically.
We have 4, maybe 5.
Yeah, but our board probably has 20 of them on there. So I'd like to have a little discussion on your thoughts of, almost hate to even say this, exercising the 3rd Wednesday of the month, which we officially have on our calendar for another meeting. It's kind of hard for us to anticipate whether things are going to be controversial or non-controversial, frankly, in the environment that we find ourselves in today. I'll tell you that. I've been doing this a long time, and it's hard for me to guess in many cases. And it's hard for me to guess at what the controversy may be. We try to do the best we can with the resources that we have. What I can try to do is, as best we can, try to split up the cases so that we don't have 10 on one night and 4 on another. We don't operate like city council. You just read timing requirements that you don't want to inadvertently have something move forward with a recommendation for denial for lack of action. If you can help it, in my opinion, I think it's cleaner to take a vote. This is what you did tonight in that case. But just your thoughts on 3rd Wednesdays. I know we have been 1st Wednesdays for a while now. I also am going to be searching for some dates for some steering committee meetings before too long as well. So I was kind of hoping the 3rd Wednesday might work out. It may not. Would anybody have a conflict with that? Or would you prefer, I've had some commissions that would prefer to be here till 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning for one night a month rather than potentially doing that for 2 nights a month. But I will tell you, controversial or no, if you have 4 items, if you have 1 item on, we're going to be here for 2 hours. Not all the time, but it just seems to work out that way. So leave that for a little discussion. Everybody looks so happy.
I'd rather split them up because I've been to those 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning, and believe me.
It's hard to think.
Yeah, it's hard to keep concentrating. I would, if at all possible, I'd like to see them split up. I don't want to go to any more meetings I have to, but then 1 o'clock can make it just a.
And for those of us that work another job,
Yeah, everybody works. So.
Well, not everybody, no.
Well,
Thank you.
now, wait, Jim, I think he works.
Dave, could I don't mean to be rude and interrupt, but they're hanging on for Mr. Bergauer's question. I witnessed a little bit of miscommunication, and I just wanted to clear it up. At the very end there, since we were very detailed in the process.
Okay.
The question was, can the developer move forward now at the reduced number of units? And the answer was yes. He has to come back through with the development plan at the appropriate number of units. So he
Well,
can't just go to construction.
Yeah, no, what has to happen now is hold on. Forget all that.
Yep.
Okay. What has to happen first is council has to deal with these two cases. However it is they're going to deal with them. Once that occurs, let's say it's in the affirmative, he obviously could build this plan. If it's in the negative, then he could resubmit at 140 units on this site. He would not need a zone change. He would only need a development plan approval at that point in time.
But that comes through the whole process.
And then it goes back from planning commission to council, but it isn't a public hearing. There isn't notice. And it has different criteria and tests to pass that are generally a little bit lower than a zone change request, just to be fully transparent.
Thank you. I think.
Thanks for, does that make sense?
It does make sense. I know that public parts closed, but if in the last meeting, he expressed concern over getting the buildings under roof by this coming winter. Obviously, he wants to get construction going, and I understand everything he's trying to do with construction. He could essentially ignore the current motions for increasing and all that have to go through council. Scrap his current plan, revise it to 140 units, and whether council approves or denies the current elements on the table, he could essentially move forward with a 140 unit plan, going through the planning commission reviews and all the other processes, ignoring the current state of these, is what I'm saying.
I would.
It gets ugly,
well,
but if he's looking at schedule.
Well, wait, hold on. Everybody hold on. I'm going to have to say that no staff up here is going to answer your question. I would advise planning commission not to answer your question. Okay? And I would say that that is not because I don't like you or it's not a germane question, but it's simply because a third alternative is that he could also bring some sort of cause of action against the city of Delaware in these cases. And so to that extent, what I would say is the best advice that we can all do right now is not answer that question, because there are limitless permutations to your question.
I respect
So-
your response. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Where were we?
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. So there seems to be a consensus that if it seems like one is clogging up and may take quite a bit of time, is there an hour at which, again, it's hard to guess, but is there an hour at which you sort of like 11 o'clock's okay, but 12's not? If we had to go to 11 and not trigger 2,
8 o'clock's all right.
we try, I know. We try to guess best we can, but we also don't know necessarily what you're going to ask.
Well, if you're going to divide it up, then you might as well go to 11. You know. But
Again, we're going to guess wrong, but I'm going to try best I can.
it almost takes, unless it's just like tonight, it took 2 hours.
Yeah.
And this wasn't as controversial as we have seen them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as complicated as we've seen them.
I agree.
Yeah.
We're not out of here yet.
All right.
I got one question. To clarify the time, would we make that decision that night if we don't get through the agenda, that it would go to 2 weeks later?
Well, I think we might come to a point in the evening where we might have to do that. And you just, officially table whatever
Yeah,
cases are left. to
I'd
the
really
next-
not like to do that because everybody who has come forward is here, okay? And you feel
Yeah.
kind of bad telling them,
Yeah, well,
go home and
it also
come back.
depends whether we're in a public hearing
Right,
condition or not in a public hearing condition.
Exactly.
So if we have a case with a public hearing required, I totally agree with you, Commissioner. If we have a case that we don't, what we'll try to do is we normally try to put cases on in the order received, or if we think there's going to be something controversial and there's less controversial cases, we try to put those at the front and dispense with them. What we'll try to do, I think, is put the public hearing cases up front and leave the other ones to the back of the agenda. And then if we get there and we need to table it because it's 11:30 and everybody's beat, so be it. So we'll try to do our best. Hopefully the market and developers and what have you kind of help space these out. There may be some other controversial ones in this year. Fair warning. So,
Run them on.
any others? Any other updates for what we know is coming?
We got Glen Ross North, the park area, they want to add a pool, so that's going to be an amended plan. Ohio Wesleyan University's building a house of for culture, black culture, next to the honors house. Glen Ross, section 15 final development plan and final subdivision plan are coming in, and Glenwood Commons, they're expanding, they're adding 2 parcels along Glen Parkway that probably should have been done years ago. Now they're doing it. That's going to be a rezoning. So, these 4 should be.
Technical rezoning, I wouldn't anticipate controversy on that, but
Now, you say Ohio Wesleyan's talking about building, it'd be the last building for that, wouldn't it?
No, there's a.
this is on Oak Hill.
Oh, on Oak Hill, okay.
Yeah.
Taking that building down.
Because I was thinking it was gonna be on the other one, and then we're gonna have to address that street.
Yep, this is on Oak Hill, just east of the honors house.
Okay,
that came.
no, I got that. No, that's all.
Existing house there now, they're going to take it down.
Yeah,
It's a good looking plan, in our opinion.
Yeah.
Happy
How
to
many
answer any
permits
questions.
for February?
I didn't get a chance to look. I didn't get a chance to look. I'm sorry. January was the highest since I've been keeping specific records since 2005. Which was pretty much the height of the market last time, before the crash. So February, well, I could tell you, Blake will probably tell you he's cranked out a lot of permits this month. So it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't right up there too. Mayor, we're on the countdown clock for 40,000. I am watching permits and hopeful we can embarrass one of our new families to the good, and maybe do a proclamation or something, or have you do your thing as mayor and when welcome them as the 40,000th resident of the city. But it's going to happen this year, barring a meltdown or something. Okay. Am I missing something, Madam Mayor? You know more about what's going on than I do. They may be interested. I think that's it.
All right. Commission member comments and discussion. We'll start with you, Mr. Hall.
No comments.
No comments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
none here.
Keep up the good work, you guys.
I won't be at the June meeting, the first one. We'll be in DC for that week. And is the, I want to say Terra Nova,
Terra Alta?
Terra Alta, yeah, we've been testing. Terra Nova, or the Terra Alta on the, coming up. It looks like they've got a road going in.
Oh, yeah, they've had
Or
quite a lot of
the road in,
infrastructure
or-
going in. They're getting close to acceptance of public improvements, closer, and then Mylar planning. We have to do a little technical staff level cleanup on the preliminary plan and plat, but we've committed to that long ago. So they're moving forward, and I would anticipate houses going in later this year. They are talking to the city a little bit about potential community authority. So, and I think they came up at the finance committee meeting. of council, so that's nothing new in the public realm, but the same developer now owns Terra Alta Stockdale Farms along Broadmiller Road. We've talked about this before, but they also now own the Rogers piece, which is the piece, a heavily wooded piece between the two.
Okay.
This is a good thing from my perspective because it allows it really to be master planned. And it's on the scale of area and potential number of units, subject to changes that might come forward, of the communities at Glen Ross. It's that big.
That's a lot, it's a lot of acres.
But it allows the landscaping. I anticipate things like, of course, the branding and all that to be coordinated, but I anticipate a significantly upgraded recreational package. And if I get that, that'll be a good thing, I think, overall. Rather than right now, we have a pocket park in phase one, sort of a traditional pocket park, I'll say. What we've been talking about is something significantly upgraded over that, which would be pretty cool for the overall subdivision.
As long as we don't have to maintain it.
It would be HOA maintained. So that's the update on Terra.
Anything else, Dan?
Nope, that's it.
It's been an interesting couple of months. Let's keep having fun.
It's, yeah, I mean, the only comment I have tonight is thanks to staff and the engineering team, as always, impeccable job, great information, and thanks for doing it and providing some additional commentary to help folks understand who maybe don't do this on a daily basis. That's all I have this fine evening.
Thank you, Lane, too. Thank those two.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's just kind of part of staff, but I would like to especially call out Elaine for all of her hard work, her efforts, and her dedication.
The smile.
It is the smile. Thank you for reminding me, by the way. I would have been remiss had I forgotten.
I would have let you know.
Next regular meeting is scheduled for April 4th, 2018. If you have any conflicts, just shoot Elaine a note and let her know.
Are we going to have one on?
Not for March, third week.
Settle down. And our meeting is adjourned at 8:24 p.m.